And every week, Stivers Ford is downright proud to salute great organizations in town. And there is an organization that has been around for a long time, and you might be seeing some things popping up on local TV that look like this.
Rock and Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rock and Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
Hard to believe it's been 25 years of doing some things, keeping kids off of drugs and alcohol. Anti-bullying has been added to the mix as well. And a man who has been there from the very beginning, as a matter of fact, the cornerstone of the Rock and Prevention organization is with us right now. Ray Johnson is here. And boy, oh boy, have you seen things change.
I really have. 25 years ago, 1990, I got a call from Bill Reichart. I don't know how many people remember Bill Reichart, but he was
the store.
He was the owner and manager and advertising, the whole deal, at a clothing store on 42nd Street in the Roosevelt Shopping Center. Anyway, I had known him for years prior to 1990 because he was a client of mine.
And tell everybody what business you were in so they know your background.
I was a salesperson at one of the other channels here in town.
Go ahead and say what.
Channel 13 at that time.
Yeah.
Geez, you look okay for having been in broadcasting.
Thank you very much.
It's killing me.
Come on. I moved over to Channel 5 in 1987 as sales manager. So it was 3 years after that I took that job that I got a call from Bill, and he wanted to tell me about a young man by the name of Pat McManus who was doing a great job as a counselor at a drug center in Des Moines. And he had a new concept using music and mentoring to keep kids off of drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. And he said to me, you know, you've been in Variety Club for, at that time, 15 years, raising money for disadvantaged kids.
Right.
So he said, I think you can help us. I want you to get with Pat and help him promote this and make it grow. So I had never met Pat, but I called Pat and said, let's get together. He came over to my office, and that kid walked in there with that big smile on his face, and he had a swanner to his gait, and he had just a beaming. He was absolutely on top of it.
You said a sparkle in his eyes.
A sparkle in his eyes.
That's what I remember you saying.
But he also had a good firm handshake. Anyway, we sat down and he gave the presentation about this new concept of his, which was preventing kids from alcohol and tobacco and drugs. And he did such a great job. He had a professional business plan laid out, step by step by step. And I listened to this for half hour, 45 minutes. And he said, Ray, what do you think? And I said, Pat, I'm going to tell you something. On paper, it looks great. But it's going to take a tremendous amount of work to get this off the ground, let alone sustain it for any period of time.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's going to be difficult. And he looked me right in the eye and he says, Ray, if I have the backing of good people, businesses, charities, he said, I will make this work. And he was just determined to sell me. And I got up and I shook his hand and I said, let's get to work. So we did. First thing I did was take him over and introduce him to Keith Swanson, who was president of the Variety Club at the time. And I introduced him to Larry Edwards, who was the executive director of the Iowa Broadcasters Association. And Pat went to work with his presentation on those two people, and he sold them lock, stock, and barrel. In fact, he got audiences for the whole board of those two organizations, and they loved him, and they loved his idea. And so, you know, just a beautiful partnership was formed right then. So the first thing we did was to write and produce public service announcements to run on television and radio stations in central Iowa, all members of the Iowa Broadcasters Association. Tens of thousands of dollars in airtime for free.
Wow.
And that's really what put Rock and Prevention on the map.
Yeah, because everybody was running them. You know, be it
Absolutely.
TV, be it radio, everybody had Rock and Prevention.
And that was their
stuff.
dedication to Pat and Rock and Prevention, and they never looked back. They ran those spots all over the place, and it just, like I say, put us on the map.
And speaking of, speaking of PSAs, one of the early PSAs, if I remember, involved the use of Tom Arnold.
Yes,
which
it
was
did.
a look.
Yes,
we
it did.
have that here. If I think we can take
Yeah.
a peek at Tom Arnold, the early days of Rock and Prevention.
Hey, Tom Arnold, Iowa guy here for Rock and Prevention. You know, drugs and alcohol could ruin your lives. They almost ruined mine. And kids need to know they shouldn't take that first drink or drug. Rock and Prevention is a fun drug prevention program that trains local high school students who then teach elementary kids how to refuse drugs, tobacco, everything. You don't have to stop if you never start. This program uses rock and roll and is a great way to teach. So call Rock and Prevention. It rocks.
There you go.
Well, anyway, after all of that, the first year we helped over 22,000 young people.
That's a huge number.
Absolutely, and it was mind-boggling to me. That was Pat's hard work, and it worked for 22,000 people, and we were off and running. We used to meet on a regular basis, Pat and I, and Pat was putting in 15 hours a day, 7 days a week to get this thing going. He was the hardest worker I've ever seen in my life. And he'd come to my office and we'd talk about things we should be doing and organizations to call on. And we'd listen to Dr. Norman Vincent Peale's Dial-A-Prayer.
Yeah.
I kid you not. Which gave us inspiration and direction and faith and just made us feel good and confident. And as a result of that, we prayed hard and we pitched hard. And we prayed hard and we pitched hard.
So the idea here is to get kids when they're young, elementary, junior high?
Well, it's kindergarten to 12.
Wow, okay.
But when you get up into the senior high school, those are the people that help out when Pat does these programs
The
at the various
mentoring,
schools.
yeah, the
Right,
mentoring
right.
aspect of it.
And I always knew that Rock and Prevention had a lot of promise, but to have the impact that it did on 1.5 million children, teachers, and families.
That blows your mind.
Was just, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And
It
what
was,
a great
it
thing.
was a knockout thing, yeah.
And you were the first step of getting that done. That's the thing that really gets me. I didn't realize that story till recently.
Right.
And that's why it was so important. And now they're taking it to another level. Rock and Prevention announced, was it just last week, it took it to another level,
Yes.
Latino version
Yes.
of it.
Yes. Well, it's going to be, it's already nationwide, and it'll be getting into foreign countries. Pat's had that idea forever, and he's such a dedicated man. I don't call him a young man anymore, but
Nobody's young anymore, but he has made it work.
you know, Rock and Prevention is in the kissing and hugging business, and it teaches people to love one another. That's key. Teaches people to love one another.
If
And
people want more information, there maybe you're hearing this for the first time and want to incorporate it, what's the best way to learn more or get in touch?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, thank you.
I have here 12 bullet points of what Rock and Prevention is all about, and I'm sure you can get that if you go to
rockandprevention.org.
Yeah,
.org.
There you go.
Okay.
But have a
Perfect.
copy of that because it's pretty
Here, Jason, you need to learn.
Wonderful. Ray,
all-encompassing.
you were there at the beginning, and 25 years later, you're proud to just see how it was grown and how it's changed
Absolutely.
lives.
It's been a thrill. It's been an absolute thrill. And I tell you what about Pat McManus. He's the most unforgettable character I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, no question about it.
Talented. I mean, he writes music. He performs music. He's got a studio where he gets all that done. And it's amazing. Just amazing.
Amazing
Thank
job.
you for joining
Thank you
us
very
this
much
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Thanks
We
for having
appreciate it.
me.